Hello students. This video is going to be the first in the series for the September 18th class. And for this week, we're really going to be focusing on the I in geographic information systems. Last week was all about the G, the geography, how we drew shapes with editor, coordinate systems, plotting XY coordinates. But the shapes themselves, without the information, the attributes, won't tell the full story. If you want to follow along here, I've drug in the neighborhood crime population from Intro to Tables. And it's interesting enough to know where the neighborhoods are and what they look like. But it's when I open the attribute table and I begin to see their names, their sizes, how much population they have, who owns, who rents, amount of burglaries, that I begin to really get into the brunt of spatial analytics. Right? I can now start to answer questions I never could before. Right? Which neighborhoods have the highest percentage of renters? Right? Do neighborhoods with a higher number of renter owners proportionally have more burglaries? Are there parts of the city where there's concentrations in clusters of high rental neighborhoods or sort of highly burglarized neighborhoods, and so on and so forth? The way information is structured in ARC, whether it's Pro or GIS, whether it's an independent table, which I'll show in a second, or it's the shapefile. The rows are the records, are the information, the rows are the individual geographies, right? Each row represents a neighborhood, a farmer's market, a crash, a home, a parcel, whatever it may be. And the columns represent the attributes, the information, each unique to the row, each unique to the piece of data. Now, we frequently and almost exclusively will model shapefiles. That's really what we're trying to move towards, points, lines, and polygons. But as we sort of learned last week when we briefly plotted XY coordinates, you can have something that exists strictly as a table and get it into ArcGIS. Right? You may have information that you've recorded on Excel or something that you want to bring in and make your data more sort of powerful or knowledgeable by appending it. You may have a series of addresses or coordinate points like we did last week and want to display them on a map. So you frequently will be taking tables, that'll be a part of today's lesson, and putting them into ArcGIS. And I just wanted to make sure you know how tables are processed. So for this part of the lecture, come back out to Intro to Tables, and you'll see in there's an Excel file called Smile I want you to open. If you do not have Excel or you can't open that, I've created a backup for you here in Backup CSV. You'll just join us in about 1 minute. Once we create the CSV, which is a comma-separated value, you'll just drag this file in, Smile Backup, in Arc Catalog. But I'm going to wait a second for that. So I want you to open Smile, check out that sort of familiar structure. Columns are the coordinates and an ID. Rows are we don't know yet. So Pro and ArcGIS won't process Excel. There's a special tool, maybe later in the semester, and I'm just showing you the miscellaneous tools we missed. It's called Excel to Table you can use. I find it sometimes works, it sometimes doesn't. But largely what Excel or what ArcGIS will be able to process and can take in is what's called a comma-separated value. You've maybe seen it as CSV. It's the way that you can take a table into ArcGIS, and it's the way that you can take a table out of ArcGIS very easily and then open it back in Excel. And you can create it straight from Excel, or any other sort of open source spreadsheet-based technology you may use. And I just wanted to show you this because this is not uncommon, especially once we get to the 4th week or the 5th week and we begin to start looking at different places to get data, right? If the last 2 weeks are about learning about geography, learning about information, next week we'll be putting it together and symbolizing and visualizing. We'll close this data section out really by focusing on where you find data and how you sort of manage it and how you bring it into ArcGIS and such. And frequently your first step when you're getting tabular data You know, for example, if you're collecting data from the census on population, you know, or the Bureau of Labor Statistics on employment statistics for different geographies, you may start in Excel. And so you'll want to make sure that you're saving as any Excel file as a CSV. Now, this is one of the few moments where me having a Mac may look different from those of you who have Windows. If you have Windows, just choose from the format CSV and you're good to go. If you have a Mac, and let me repeat this, do not pick this option that's hanging up right here, the first CSV option you get. It's sort of a problem, and it creates, like, messes with the format somehow of the table and makes it impossible to load in ArcGIS. It seems like a nuance, but you need to pick Windows, comma separated. Again, this is only if you're one of the few people in this class that is running it on a Mac. So I'll pick, not that, Windows, and maybe I'll call it Smile CSV. Save it. Keep hitting continue, X out, hit save, blah, blah, blah. And then when you return back to catalog, anytime you create a new piece of data, just like we did when we were mapping geographies, I want you to right-click and hit refresh. Open up Intro to Tables, and there you'll see both the Excel that we're not using and here, that smile CSV.csv. So this is something we can take and drag and put into ArcGIS. Now, CSVs are fine, and ArcGIS can process them. And every step we're about to do in future videos, joining, plotting XY coordinates, mapping addresses, can be done from a CSV. But I want to show you some irregularities that CSVs have when they're in ArcGIS. For one, you notice that editing seems to be locked. You can't actually add any fields. You can't grow them. For another, if you were to right-click something, you can't calculate a field, right? These are all things you can do and are become really important in the next few videos, but they tend to be locked in CSVs that are in ArcGIS. So one of the things that I will often do, and this is my preference, you will choose if this matters enough to you, is I try to convert any CSV that I bring in into ArcGIS's preferred data source, which is a DBF. The way I'll do this is to right-click the table, go to Data, export it. If you're saving it in a geodatabase, that's all good. If not, find where you're going to save it. And I like to make sure I'm adding DBF to the end. I'll come up here and say smile.dbf, reminding it it's oops, that was dumb. The input rows are smile, that's what you're converting. The output name, right, that's where I'm saying it will be smile.dbf. I'm converting it to a database file. Run it. All will be good. It'll add itself. And now it just looks like a table. And now if I open it, right, I can add fields again. I could come in and I could edit the fields. ArcGIS has something familiar to work with. So again, that's just sort of a preference and a practice thing. But that's how we would create data from a table. And just so we're practicing what we learned last week, right, we can see by looking at this that it is XY coordinates. And so you might as well right-click Smile and display that XY data. Right? X and Y. Remember when you're picking coordinate system, highlight it and make sure you see it says degree under unit. Run it, and we'll have, hopefully, unless I screwed up and foot goes in the mouth, have moved from a random piece of data in Excel to its geographic equivalent, which should ultimately be a nice, happy smiley face and a waving hand to keep us feeling happy in these dark and crazy times. So that's tables in ArcGIS. Every video for the rest of today will walk through how we edit them, how we calculate fields, how we add fields, how we join those to existing data, and one other mechanism, how we can take a table and make a geography out of it using addresses. But I wanted to make sure you're comfortable with how you can pull CSVs directly in here, but more importantly, in my opinion, how I feel you should convert those CSVs to DBF files. It's just a better way to process in ArcGIS.